Hello. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Affaircare podcast. My name is Cindy Taylor. I'm the co-founder here at Affaircare, along with my dear hubby David, who's the other co-founder. And today we're going to be starting a 5-week little topic, and that is the tools that you can use to recover and reconcile your marriage. This week we're going to be discussing the Myers-Briggs Test and why that's important to recovering your marriage. And then next week we'll be discussing the 5 love languages, and again, like how to take it, but also more importantly, what the results mean. Then the week after that, we'll be discussing the love kindlers, which, as you know, is a basic here at Affaircare. Next, we'll be discussing the love extinguishers. Again, this is a basic concept here at Affaircare. If you'd want, you can always look at our articles that has basic concepts, and you can see what love extinguishers are. And then finally, our last week, we'll be discussing the other tool that we recommend, which is REBT, and how you would use it and how it's appropriate, why it's important for reconciling your marriage. So today's topic is the Myers-Briggs personality test. We're going to be discussing why the Myers-Briggs personality test is, how you can use it in recovery and reconciliation in your marriage, and why it's important. The first thing I would recommend is that you go to the page that we have on our site that is all about the Myers-Briggs test. So if you go to, we'll put the little link right here, but you'll see that it's the very first one on the quizzes page. It says to learn more about your Myers-Briggs personality and your spouse's and the natural differences between your two personalities. You can email us, and then it's got a link to our email, or you just go to the personality pages. So if you click on the image that's the Myers-Briggs personality test, that will take you to a test so that you can just answer yes and no. It's free, and it'll tell you personality type. For this particular tool, we do suggest that both the wife and the husband take the quiz and just discover a little bit more about your own self, what sort of a type you are. Just find out your own type, but also share with each other when you have some time together. Find out what your spouse's personality type is. On the quiz page that we have set up here on Affaircare, there's a little link that says to learn more about your Myers-Briggs personality, and again, we'll put that link right here. It takes you straight over to the Wikipedia page, so you can kind of learn like where it came from and whatnot about it. Likewise, we have the link to the personality page type portraits. And again, we'll put that link right here. And on that page, one of the things that's really fun to do, so for example, if you take the test and you find out your, whatever your type is, then go to the page that is the personality page type portraits, and find your type, and then click on that and open it up, and it will tell you all about what your personality type is sort of like. Now, the theory, if you will, behind this personality type is not, this is not anywhere near astrology. The people that created the test noticed that there tend to be like 4 areas or criteria that might separate people. It's a theory that kind of can be characterized in these 4 areas, and then based on the answers, you'd learn what you tend to be like. And so, as an example, you'd learn both your possible strengths and weaknesses. And of course, not everyone is exactly the same, but the idea is it's a way of learning and understanding about each other. And it just starts the discussion going, as well as, at least in our experience, it often will explain what some of the differences are. So like one of the things that's odd but true is that many people don't understand that, like I'm married to my spouse, and my spouse is not the same as me. My spouse does not express love the same way I do, does not feel love the same way I do, does not think the same way I do, does not have the same needs that I have, all those things. And so right off the bat, one of the first things that can really help in reconciliation is when you begin to realize that your spouse is not the same as you, and that maybe some of the things that you had thought were, that you had interpreted or misunderstood, really were just personality differences. And if you can learn about each other as people, you might come to realize, oh, now in the future, I notice you're an E, I'm an I, and let's work this out. And then you reach a reasonable agreement rather than continuing this fight and misunderstanding that they don't love you. Let's go over the 4 areas of the personality types that are kind of based on. I guess they call it like areas of preference. Okay, so the first one is E versus I. This is extroverted is the E, and introverted is the I. That's one of the chief criterions. And this signifies the source and the direction of a person's energy expression. So an E, for example, an extrovert, would gain their energy and then direct their energy outward, out to the external world. An introvert would gain their energy and then direct it internally into their own world. And you can see this demonstrated by an extrovert is usually a person who likes to go out. They have a lot of friends, and when they are thinking of something, they will sort of they process out loud out here, right? They're processing out in the world. An introvert is going to need time alone. They don't go out with friends as much. They tend to need time alone, or in the company of an exclusive 1 or 2 people, but usually time alone, fairly quiet. And then when they do have like this huge energy, where does it go? They have a brilliant idea and it's all in their mind. When they're processing stuff, they will withdraw, it feels like, right? They withdraw and they withdraw into their mind. And then they're processing it. And then when they have figured it out, they will come back out of their mind, if you know what I mean. So introverts process in here, extroverts process out here, and that's where their energy is. The second criterion is S for sensing, or I for intuition. Okay, this is the method by which someone perceives information. So, for example, the sensing person, the S, they mainly believe information that they have received from the external world. Perhaps they've observed, perhaps they've touched. You know what I mean? They get it from the external world. Maybe they heard it, okay? And I mean with their ear. Intuition, that would be a person who believes and kind of perceives information that they received internally or from an imaginative world. And here what I mean by that is, have you ever had this occur? You're going down the road and you're trying to decide which stock to buy. And person A is like, well, look at all this data. I read about how the history and see, they're getting information from the external world. They're reading, they're looking to other sources like external. Person B will say, I don't think this is a good deal, and I'm not positive why, but I just have this gut feeling that something's not right. And sure enough, 2 months down the road, the company completely folds because somebody was stealing from the company, let's say. The intuition person, it's not always like magical intuition. It's more like that person had gathered information that they maybe were not consciously aware of, but it was there. Maybe they heard from a friend, they just had this gut feeling, and what can I say? That is an intuition person. Sensing would be more like somebody that gathered the information via the external, their senses. Okay, then the third criterion is thinking and feeling. This is probably one of my favorite portions of the Myers-Briggs, because this is where the one place where David and I are completely the opposite. Thinking and feeling represents how a person processes the information. So, once I've gathered information, how do I process it? Thinkers are people who make a decision mainly based on logic. They would These are the engineers of the world. Okay, so a feeler would be a person who bases their decision, they make decisions based on emotion. So, like, based on what they feel they should do. So, for example, the differences you're going to hear here are like this. A thinker, they gathered all the data, and they processed the data, and there's a 57% chance that this will occur, and that chance is too low, and therefore I'm not purchasing this item. Whereas a feeler would say, I decided to purchase this because the blue made me feel happy. You get that, right? And at least for my personal experience, what I've found with this one is, since this is one of the few areas where David and I are different, that I learned quite a bit from him about thinking and how to think and what it means. And that was one thing that I found really actually fun and challenging. And this is the same thing that we would like to share with you, is that to learn where you guys are different, and then try to allow yourself to grow enough, if at minimum, at least grow to understand like where they're coming from a little bit, and so that you have some understanding of, oh, this isn't a personal slight, it is just a difference in personality. And hopefully even learn to understand their side. Okay, the fourth and final criterion is judging, perceiving. So it's like J or P. And this criterion reflects how a person implements the information that they have processed. Okay? So, a judging person, this means that a person organizes their life events sort of like by rules, and they stick to their plans. They're planners. They like things to be organized. And what I always envision in my head, a J person is like this. Right? I like they sort stuff into which box, or they'll follow the rule. They're lawful people. They like to be good, lawful citizens. What should I do? That kind of person, okay? That's a J. A perceiver would be a person that is inclined to improvise or to explore alternate options. I like to see this person is all these different shades of the rainbow, and they see all these different possibilities and options. So judging might be more like black, white. P is going to see all these different little shades of gray. When you put these four criterions together in different ways, you come up with a grand total of 16 personality types. And each one, you can imagine, is slightly different. For each one of these, you can imagine there's it's like a continuum, okay? Nobody is a perfect E. Well, I shouldn't say that. There could be a perfect E. But it's very rare to be a perfect 100% E or perfect 100% I. What you usually get is like, here's the E, here's the I, there's the continuum, and you're somewhere along the line. Unless you're right in the middle at 50%, which there are people like that, you're going to probably be, maybe you're up more towards the E, and you're about 70%, so you would count yourself as an E. Does that make sense? And it's that way for every one. So, for example, in my personality type, I'm an INFP, but I have a lot of E tendency. So I like to share what I know and what I think about with other people. David is more on the EI continuum. He's more down here. He's maybe 10% E. He's like 90% I. He likes to share it within his head and possibly with me, and that's usually about it. So he's more on the continuum down here. You get the drift, right? You could be, it's on a continuum. You're not all the way E, all the way S, all the way T, that kind of thing. So, okay, and the final portion of this, the reason why this is important for reconciling in your marriage. What we've discovered in our experience is that, like I said, very often people at first are not aware that their spouse is different than them. Then when they do discover that their spouse is, different, but yet different is okay, it's just not the same as you, that they are their own whole personality, then what happens is that people, based on their personality types, will act a certain way, and They are acting within what feels comfortable to their personality. And since their spouse is a different personality, they see that what their spouse is, and they misinterpret it because they're not understanding that that's just a personality thing. So I'll give you the great example that I use all the time. The husband is, let's say, an introvert, and the wife is an extrovert. And the wife is in the house, and she wants to have, her friends over, and and the husband is really like that, drags his energy down, and it's very tiring for him to do that. So what he does is, while she's having her parties, he'll go out in the garage, and he'll take time to himself, because he's an introvert, and he maybe tinkers on the car and thinks. And meanwhile, she's got all her friends over, and she feels really hurt, because it's like, I think he's ignoring me. But in real life, what it is that she wants to connect with other people, and that's the way that she gathers energy, but that actually drains him. And likewise, he wants to be by himself, but that drains her. So then they end up having fights about, like, you never take me anywhere, right, she says. And then he says, all you ever want to do is leave. Why don't you ever want to spend time with me? So here they are having the constant fight, and fighting is a love extinguisher. It's going to take away the love in your marriage. Well, after you've done this personality test, you look at, you realize she's an E, he's an I, and you go, guess what? She hasn't been fighting me and being like hating me and whatnot all this time. She just is an E. So then you discuss it with each other, and you say, well, look, I understand now that we've done this little test thing. You are an E, and this is one of your needs, is that you need to gather energy by being with others. And so consequently, it's not reasonable to expect an E to live an I lifestyle. Likewise, it's not reasonable for an E to expect an I to live the E lifestyle. It would kill them. So what you have to do as a couple is just discuss it and say, okay, so we understand now this is not a matter of hating each other or being unnatural or any kind of weirdness that happens in fights, but rather we need to have some time so that it's acceptable to you to gather your energy in an extroverted way. And likewise, we need to, as a couple, have a way for me to gather my energies in an introverted way. And there you go. Then you've got it straightened out, and that will decrease the love extinguishers because you're no longer thinking that the other guy doesn't love you. And this happens in every one of the criterions, especially the introvert-extrovert one and the thinking-feeling. Those two are, because the wife does this one here. You don't have any emotions at all. You're never, and he's all like, well, you're completely irrational, at least once a month. And that, of course, makes her all even more upset, right? Well, he's just being a thinker, and she's just being all feeling, because thinkers don't make their decisions based on how they feel at them. So once you can reach through that and you go like, oh, my personality type is like this, and this tends to be the way we are, you share it with your spouse, and then you come to some mutual understandings to say, I understand now that you were not trying to be disrespectful or unloving to me now. You are acting in your personality type. The last one that is kind of a weird one a little bit is the judging, perceiving one. A judging person is you're going to hear a lot of should. How should this have been dealt with? And in their world, it's kind of like there's all these rules about the way things should go. And when you do things that are like improvising and exploring some new alternative, to you might be saying, well, there could be a million answers to that. I'm just trying to think of some options. But to them, there's like, this is the way it should be done. And then if you're not doing it that way, it's not occurring. So again, if you're finding out that maybe one of you is a J and one of you is a P, depending on how far the J is on that perspective, if they're highly J, on this J side, it could be really hard for them to understand that, well, if you love me, you should show it to me this way. And for them to kind of understand that actually there are many ways to show love to a person, and that would be hopefully getting the talk started as far as what you were trying to accomplish when you were showing the little different options and giving them the freedom to make a choice that would feel like a burden to a J versus feeling like love. So This is a very important tool. We highly encourage you to go to our quizzes page and take the Myers-Briggs. And then if you have questions about your personality type or your spouse's, and you're not being able to get the answers from the pages that we linked, on our little quizzes page, please feel free to email us at affaircare@gmail.com. We'd be happy to answer your Myers-Briggs personality questions. Okay, so as I mentioned, next week we'll be doing the Love Languages podcast, and we'll again be discussing, just like we did with this one, why it's important, how to take it, where the links are. This is not, just like Myers-Briggs is not something we invented, Love Languages is not something we invented either, but it is an extremely helpful tool when it comes to reconciling a marriage, especially after an affair. So, all right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.